As indicated by the thumbnail, today we're going to be doing a product review / spotlight on a brand called Cyelee Optics, specifically their CAT EDG closed emitter optic. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with the brand or who were like me and had heard the name stirring about the internet but didn't have much knowledge of them otherwise, Cyelee is a brand that's relatively new, getting their start back in 2020 from what I read, whose mission statement is more or less to make duty-rated products that don't break the bank, which I'm sure everyone can appreciate. That being said, I've been seeing a pretty big product push from Cyelee as of late, with several content creators reviewing not only this, but other optics in their lineup. And full disclosure, I happen to be one of those creators. So yes, Cyelee did send this product out to me for a review, but I want to make it very clear. When they first contacted me, I said I would love to do the review so long as you're open to 100% honest feedback. They said absolutely. So shout out to Cyelee not only for the opportunity, which I'm very thankful for, but for being a brand that actually values that feedback and is open to potential criticism. That's a great first impression in my book.
Typically, I wouldn't do an unboxing, but since they pack so much stuff in here, and this is a relatively new company to me, I figured I'd go over it with you guys. Get a nice patch if you're into patches. A sticker, which is die cut, so it probably won't stick to anything. Lens cloth. Instruction manual that no one cares about. And something I really love to see is that there's not just one bag, but 2 bags of screws of various sizes. I'm assuming that's just 2 different bags of the same screws in case you lose some, which is pretty rad. And then we have a flathead driver for your windage and elevation. I really love that companies are doing this. Very handy tool. And your screw tool. And then the main event, the CAT EDG. And it's got some cool machining on it. I guess it's supposed to look cat-ish. I don't know. But we do have some nice controls here. And something some companies are doing that I really love is those little irons built in. As you see, the dot looks pretty crisp. It's also just like a one-tap push. You don't even have to hold it, so I love that. Have a battery tray, which is really nice. No underside load for the battery, because that is the worst. But yeah, first impressions. Nice little window size on it for being a compact / EDC optic. But yeah, looks pretty great.
As far as the optic itself, it's my understanding this is designed for concealed carry or smaller framed pistol applications. So as you see, I have mine mounted on a Glock 43X model, more specifically a SCT frame. Reason being is not only does it cater to what the intended size of this optic is for, but I actually, prior to this review, did not have any pistols that were milled for what this requires, which is an RMSC cut. However, I was actually in the market for a new upper for this guy because previously I was running a comp and I wanted to bring the profile down because this is my backpack gun that I throw in my sling pack when I go to work every day. So I went out and I bought a ported upper, which works out because now I can do a review with my own pistol. So with all that aside, let's get out to the range and do some shooting. I've actually not fired a single round through this, so we're going to get a toes to tits review on this guy. Sorry for the abrupt interlude from the comfort of my bathroom, but it is the most acoustically sound room in my home, so you get what you get. The reason being is that I have forgot to include some pertinent information, starting with the nerdy specs, which I'll post right here. You can also find all of this on the website, but here we are. The other of which is the fact that I will continually refer to this as an everyday carry-based optic when they clearly market it as a duty optic, hence the name EDG, which coincidentally does not stand for everyday Gary, which would be a lot more fun, but it is enclosed duty grade, which does make more sense. However, the line between carry and duty can somewhat be blurred with this optic because they really hit the sweet spot between the two. That said, I'm going to stick with the carry-based, and you're just going to have to deal with it. Now, let's get back to the video. As mentioned, prior to shooting this video, I had not fired any shots through this optic, so obviously we had to do some zeroing, and here's that group. First shot was low left, so I made an elevation adjustment to get to here. And then I made one final windage adjustment, and I got this 3-round group, which is about 1 inch, 1 MOA, which I'm happy with. And my process, I basically start at 10 yards, get a pretty tight group, then I run it back to 25, see where those land. That'll give me an idea if I need to make any final adjustments, and also gives me an idea of how it will perform at, say, 100 yards or further. So yeah, pretty quick zeroing experience. And I feel that's mostly due to the fact that there are great dials on this optic. Very noticeable engagement, both audibly and physically. So you know each click, and you're not kind of guessing and watching your turn as you go, as with some optics. Being that I mounted this on a Glock 43X model, I did want to point out that it does overhang the edge of the slide there. So if you get caught up on aesthetics or plan on mounting this on a similar size pistol, just something to keep in mind. Personally, it doesn't bother me aesthetically whatsoever. However, what I really wanted to focus on is the size of the window on this guy. As you see, you get a great field of view. And for everyday carry optics, that's not something you see a lot, especially with the still minimalist overall profile. In fact, I could compare this to like a Holosun EPS in terms of the size. Now you do get a little bit of extra material up here, but it doesn't really affect much, and it'll just add to the strength of this if you bang it around at all. So yeah, I think they did a great job with the balance in that regard. We're going from zeroing straight into serious business. 100 yards, right off the cuff. So I mentioned the gun I put this optic on is my bag gun. And this is actually the very bag I was referring to. This is the sling that I carry to work every day that holds the Glock 43X the optic is on currently. So we're going to run a drill that simulates kind of a high stakes situation where I'm pulling the gun out of the bag and trying to acquire the dot as quickly as possible to see just how easy it is to find the dot on this optic, and also jostle it around a little bit and see if we scuff it up any. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the Glock 43X, but for those of you who aren't, it has a certain reputation of being snappy. Now personally, I've shot this enough and I'm comfortable with it to the point where I don't really notice it, but nevertheless, it still gives us a good test of the return to zero on this optic. So we're going to do some rapid fire and see how it handles. Nice and easy. Something else I've yet to mention, but is definitely worth pointing out, is the dot clarity. I have this turned all the way up so that you guys can see it, and there is still just no starburst. Now, that's a stark comparison to the Trijicon RMR-CC that I had mounted on this pistol before, which, quite frankly, is just awful. So it just goes to show you that paying the extra money and that brand recognition doesn't always equal results. One hand, little gun, 50 yards. Now, no good old boy video is complete without a little fun. So let's test how this bad boy tracks. Pretty good. That's an interesting one. Kind of a straight shot right down the top. So before we get into my final thoughts on the CYElee CAT EDG, I'd like to first once again thank CYElee for the opportunity to review this product. Very awesome for you to send this out to a small channel and entrust that I give an honest review. So shout out to CYElee for that. But more importantly, I'd like to thank every single one of you, those who have liked, subscribed, commented, or even watched these videos. It's because of your engagement that things like this can happen. And I can only hope that we continue to grow this community and get more opportunities like this in the future. Now, it's worth mentioning that I started this channel with humble intentions, meaning I wanted to reach a broad audience from beginners all the way to experienced shooters and create content that was not only enjoyable, but relative among the spectrum. Now, that's a hard thing to do when you have folks out there preaching if you don't have this or spin that, then you're just a beginner, which quite frankly is ridiculous. If you can afford something, train with it, and shoot just as well, that speaks for itself. Now, why is that relative to this video? Well, because this is considered a budget option, and I consider this a true contender in the market. That being said, brand recognition doesn't always equal results. So keep that in mind. So to wrap this up and get down to the nitty gritty, I'm going to lay out some pros and cons, starting with the cons because they're rather minimal and very nitpicky. That being said, while they do pack a lot in the box with this, one thing they do not include is an optic cover. Now, personally, that's not such a big deal for me anymore as I have my own range that I can walk out to. But like most of you, I would imagine, I spent most of my shooting experience going to public ranges, packing everything into one duffel bag, and hoping for the best outcome. So that optic cover just offers a little bit of glass coverage and a tiny bit of shock absorption as well. So that's something I hope they consider in the future. The other thing is more of a personal matter, and that's that this is a red dot. I prefer green dots. I didn't see that they offer green dots at this time, but it is something I would like to see personally. Like I said, may not matter to you, but if I'm being nitpicky, that's another thing. Now, for the pros, there's quite a few. I think I've kind of covered them throughout this video, so I'll just go over the highlights. And that is namely the glass. The glass in respect to the overall profile is damn near perfect. I mean, they really nailed it with this. For an everyday carry-ish optic, this offers a great field of view, stays minimal, and as I mentioned before, if you were to compare it to anything, it would probably be like a Holosun EPS or EPS carry. And I actually owned both of those. And let me tell you about my experience. With the EPS carry, I owned it for about 2 years and replaced it twice. Once the glue gave way, had glass wobble. The second time, the glass cracked when it was in holster, meaning I didn't bang it around. I have no idea what happened, and nothing justified it to be cracked. I looked down at it, and it was literally cracked in my holster. So your guess is as good as mine. With that being said, if you're going to consider Holosun, there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't consider cyelee. And in fact, if I were to tell you one or the other, I'd go with this all day. So anyway, that's my thoughts on the cyelee CAT EDG. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Cheers, and God bless. The magazine fell out. Like and subscribe if you know everything the media tells you is a lie.